Well, on this topic, earlier I spoke to Bonnie Leung. She's a district councillor in Hong Kong, also part of the pro-democracy movement, and she's visiting here, Parliament House in Australia, this week.
Well, I'm here in Australia to do a little bit of lobbying, hoping that the international community will voice out for Hong Kong, because Hong Kong now is facing an emergency, because inside our system, facing the tyranny government, that in the system we simply cannot seek justice. Hong Kong now had become a police state where there are bad cops, but the system actually protects the bad cops. And the bad cops, when they blatantly break the law, some actions of them actually are considered to be a torture set by Amnesty International Hong Kong, that they still have any legal consequences. So the system actually protect and also encourage this kind of misconduct. So inside the system, we cannot seek justice. That is why we need the international community to stand with us, stand with Hong Kong, and help us to tell the Hong Kong government and also the Beijing governments that when they undermine human rights, when they so blatantly break the joint declaration and also the basic law, that they cannot get away with it because the world is watching.
When you say you talk about lobbying other governments, what are you actually hoping specifically the Australian government to do? They've had some things to say about Hong Kong, but it's pretty careful language about de-escalating. They're not going any further. Would you like stronger comments or even consequences? Well,
Hong Kong people are actually very grateful to all the politicians or any people actually to voice out for Hong Kong, to address the issues to the international community. And I really hope that the Australian government or any politicians can voice out for Hong Kong and actually can consider giving sanctions to Hong Kong officials or Beijing officials when they break the international law and they violate international treaties like the Sino-British Joint Declaration, also when they undermine the human rights and rule of law in Hong Kong.
How would that look? I mean, this has tacit approval from the Beijing government, so would sanctioning individuals actually work, or are you talking about trade sanctions, which obviously would hurt Australia as well?
Well, actually, if the Hong Kong government and Beijing government continues this kind of bully, it will hurt the economy even more, because what we are seeing in Hong Kong is that, for example, an airline, the Cathay Pacific, which Hong Kong people used to be very, very proud of, now because of the Chinese giving pressure to it, their CEO were forced to resign. The union leader were fired, pilots were fired, because of the support of this movement. And we see this bullying actually happen all across the world, not only in Hong Kong. Hong Kong is only visualizing this bully. And if the world keeps silent to this kind of bully, and somehow if Hong Kong fail, this bully will soon come knock on everybody's door, including Australian stores, including the governments will suffer, and also corporations will suffer.
So you'd like to see a whole lot of nations draw a line in the sand with China, group together and rise up against China, initially in an economic sense, I suppose?
Yes, we really hope that the world, all the countries, all the corporations will join force together and to say no to this bully, and to let them know that when they cross the line, when they force everybody to follow their terms, and this term violates the universal values like rule of law and human rights and democracy, that you will say no.
What about the Chinese people themselves? Obviously there's been a lot of criticism of the Chinese government, but they have been whipping up a lot of nationalism within mainland China. Do you think there's strong support for the actions they take, that people are being taken along with their rhetoric?
Well, I'm sad to say that in the mainland China, people do not have full information because they are living within a very thick firewall that they do not have freedom of expression, they do not have full information, and also they have the brainwashing machine, education machine, and they're also facing a huge propaganda machine.
Xi Jinping has said this week that anyone attempting to split China in any part of the country will end in crushed bodies and shattered bones. Are you fearful for how this will end in Hong Kong, possibly another Tiananmen?
Well, of course we're scared, and also actually Tiananmen massacre can happen again in Hong Kong without the soldiers, without the troops actually being deployed. Because, as I said, the police are already using live ammunition in Hong Kong. And it was sheer luck that still not a single protesters were being killed. But we already got someone shot nearly at the heart, and we got at least 2 people who shot in the eye and got lost their eyesight. So we are at the state of emergency. And the Hong Kong government is not stopping. They are actually applying more evil laws onto us. And, for example, they are now banning us with wearing face masks, and they are banning us from having peaceful demonstrations. So no more 2 million people marching to the streets, not because Hong Kong people do not support this movement, but because the police actually banned us.
You mentioned the face masks there. This was obviously an attempt by the authorities to make sure they could identify protesters. You're out there very publicly now, Bonnie. When are you returning to Hong Kong, and are you worried what might happen to you?
Well, at this point, I'm still quite lucky that I'm not being arrested. But really, in this movement, no one is safe, especially the known faces, because we've seen in the umbrella movement that 5 students leaders had negotiations with the government, and then later on, when the focus is shifted from Hong Kong to somewhere else, 4 students out of those 5 student leaders were actually arrested and put in jail. So I really don't know. But as I said, hopefully, with international support, the Hong Kong government, before they make any more stupid mistakes, they can think twice before it. What I can say is that me and my teammates had never gave them any excuses. We had not broken the law for them to arrest us.
Bonnie Leung, really appreciate your time today, and enjoy the Australian Parliament. Thank you.